Alright guys, so now that we've seen some footage, let's go into the build guide. We are trying to scale Shadow Cascade as much as possible. This, we're going to use Synchronized Strikes to cast 4 Shadows, and use Shadow Cascade after it. Mainly, we have Shadow Cascade after Shift, so we're using Synchronized Strike and shifting out to be able to damage mobs here. So we have Shadow Cascade that we scale our damage as much as possible. We have Shift for giving us a lot of buffs, and it's our movement ability. Synchronized Strikes to get our shadows out so that all of the Shadow Cascades actually shotgun. So all of these actually go one on top of the other, and it's one of those abilities that actually can shotgun in the game. We have Decoy as a defensive ability. We have Smoke Bomb as an offense, giving us damage, giving us tankiness, also giving us a free Silver Shroud stack, so it's a lot of utility and damage. So that is about it for the abilities that we're going to be using. So we'll go into more detail right now. First off, Shadow Cascade. Shadow Cascade, we're grabbing this node here for more damage. We're grabbing this node and this node for more damage as well, using a sword and a dagger, which we are using. So yeah, this is damage. There's this node here. Shadow Cascade deals more damage if you have a specific number of shadows. So we're maxing this one out for 100% more damage. We're getting we need to have 4 shadows out. Okay, something is bugged about this thing here. So, well, it's not actually this that is bugged. I think it's the Shadow Cascade after shifting that is snapshotting the last version of Shadow Cascade that you've used manually. So, if you're starting out an Echo, for example, always Synchronize Strike and Shadow Cascade manually, and then all of your Shadow Cascade done after shifting will have that 100% multiplier added to it. If you don't do this and you just Shadow Cascade once like this without any shadows, you're not getting this buff here because all of your Shadow Cascades after shifting will use the last version of Shadow Cascade that you've used. So I have no shadows right now, as you can see. My Shadow Cascade after shifting are not dealing a lot of damage. If I have 4 shadows, so this note here says 4 shadows, 100% more damage. I have 4 shadows. I use Shadow Cascade manually, and then my Shadow Cascade will deal a lot more damage after shifting. So keep this in mind. If you're wondering why you're not dealing enough damage, maybe you accidentally just Shadow Cascade without any shadows. You must have 4 shadows, Shadow Cascade once, and then your Shadow Cascade after shift will use the snapshotted version of Shadow Cascade. So just keep this in mind. We're going here to gain some mana per shadow consumed. So this is our main way to regain mana and keep our combo going while we're going through the maps. I'm going for the area here just because I like to have a lot of clear. You could absolutely go for Critical Strike multiplier here, and instead of these points here, you could put some points into Carnage, and then we're having 4% base crit here. This is for Shadow Cascade. Shift we're using for Shurikens. So Shurikens will give us armor and some buffs, so I'll go over this later. But basically we're getting 5 Shurikens each time we're shifting. We're getting this node for the mana efficiency and cooldown recovery speed because we want to have as much cooldown as possible on shift because this is how we're going to deal our damage. We have movement speed buff here. We have a shadow created after shifting, and then we also have that we're using Shadow Cascade after the shift. We have mana gain on use because this build is very mana hungry, so we want to get as much mana as possible back. We're invulnerable while shifting, and then there's this node here that gives you a lot of dodge rating per dexterity. This node is really OP as long as you have like one roll of percentage dodge on your gear somewhere, and then if you have like a lot of dexterity, this will give you like a lot of dodge right after shifting. Synchronized Strikes. We're going here for the area just to get to increase damage here and +2 shadows created. So this +2 shadows created will enable us to have 4 shadows at all time when you're using it. And with our 4 shadows, we're getting this 100% multiplier from Shadow Cascade. So more damage, 4 shadows. I'm going here for the physical res shred. If you do it correctly, you can have all of your shadows hit the same mob and you get all of your stacks of shred at once. These dummies have a pretty small hitbox, but usually you can manage to do it fairly easily. You want to go all 3 points here for the mana efficiency because this is a very, very mana hungry build, like I said. So, yeah, you want to consume as little mana as possible. I'm putting 4 points in attack speed here. I'll go over why. And I'm putting shadows jump inward, so it's easier to shotgun all of your shadows and apply all of these shred to mobs. And this also makes it so that it costs even more mana. If you're having trouble sustaining the mana at first when you're starting out, you can absolutely remove this node here, and you will still do a lot of damage. It's just that it will be a little bit harder for everything to shotgun, but it will enable you to play more easily with your mana. And as you get more gear, as you get your blessing, as you get all of that, you'll be able to put this point back here whenever you're ready. So one thing I'm doing here special is I'm going for attack speed. Attack speed actually makes your animation go a little bit faster for Sing Strike, because the moment where you're the most vulnerable is when you're actually using Sing Strike, and like it's kind of like your character is stopping for an instant. Um, yeah, so it just makes it a little bit smoother going into these points here. You could also just like remove this and this and just put it into Crimson Shroud to get some damage reduction from damage over time, or you could go for Armor Shred and Armor Shred effect. Yeah, so basically you could also go for health gain when you're creating shadows, but this is what the setup I went for. Um, Shurikens. So in Shurikens, we're getting this mainly to get the blade shield here. So we're getting more armor. We're getting 150% increased armor while having our blade shield up. And then I go for the extra physical shred chance whenever we go through enemies with our shurikens. Basically, these 4 points and this 1 point here can go anywhere. So you have 5 points that you can use anywhere that you want. You really want to get the ethereal blades so that they have pierce chance, so that they keep spinning around you and giving you the armor buff, even when you're going through mobs. So mandatory points, absolutely these 3 here, these 4 here, and then you want as much duration as possible. Yeah, basically that's it. And then Smoke Bomb, we're using this for multiple reasons. We're going here for the duration. We're getting melee damage here. We're getting Shadow Chance here. I'm going to explain why we want the Shadow Chance. So each second we have a chance to create a shadow at a random location inside the smoke cloud. We're getting this for the slow. We're going here to go for the Dusk Crowd frequency. So Dusk Crowd will give us glancing blow chance. So as you can see, as long as I stay inside of my smoke cloud, I'm getting more and more glancing blow, getting more tanky. And then we're going here, the initial burst applies frailty to the enemy, which is also very good. And we're absolutely getting the Silver Shroud stack here, so each time you use Smoke Bomb, you will dodge the next ability. This is incredibly powerful, so that you can kind of avoid big hits, but still stay within melee range and still keep hitting them. So it's it's a very good defensive node to take here, and I highly suggest anytime you use Smoke Bomb to go for this node here. All right, let's go over the gear now. Basically, we use Ward Gain when you create a shadow on your helm and your chest piece. This makes it so that we get some extra ward, and we're actually using the ward retention from Aura's Time Glass and the ward retention from Ivory Ring. It's a very nice little interaction since we're creating so many shadows on Smoke Bomb, on Synchronized Strike, and on Shift. So it gives you this extra layer of survivability. So that is why I went with this on my build. So we'll go over the gear. I'll switch to Tunk Labs, not Tunk Labs, but I'll switch to Epoch Tools for now to show you. So we're using a Smoke Weaver with, it has up to 25% cooldown recovery speed for shift. We're using Shadow Cascade after shifting. So this is why we're going for this weapon. It makes it very fast to clear echoes. And since we're dealing damage with our movement ability. It also has a nice 2% crit chance base and also a flat 5% that I'm getting on the katana. This will enable us to basically cap our crit only using passives, so you don't need to worry about crit on your gear at all. So I went for melee physical, shred armor, chill on hit, and critical strike multiplier here. You can, if you can, you want to try to seal that one up. Um, that would be probably like pretty much an ideal katana here. For the helmet, I went for the Gorgon Scale Coif, which gives us cooldown recovery speed because cooldown as an cooldown is just so huge for our build. You want to get between you want to aim for 60 to 75% cooldown reduction on this for it to feel really good and get a lot of ward and be able to shift all the time and attack a lot. So between 60 and 75 I felt was like the sweet spot. It's kind of hard to get there at times, but try to get there and it should feel really, really good. So you have multiple options here. Um, you could go for increased damage with Shadow Cascade per active Shadow. You can go for mana efficiency with Synchronized Strike. You can also go for Vitality. There are multiple options for prefixes. Try to go with whatever you find and whatever if you feel that you need more damage or more tankiness. Usually last epoch is an EHP meta, so as long as you're not dying you are winning. So defensive options are very, very strong, especially since this build just does so much damage anyways. Like you're pretty much one-shotting every single pack of mobs that you're running into. So yeah, you be the judge of that. As suffixes, we go for increased health and flat armor. The flat armor can also be flat health. It can also be percentage armor. But flat armor is the best because we are getting 150% increased armor with our shurikens. Yeah, so basically this is the best ideal setup. It's going to be flat armor. For our body armor, we went for the crit avoidance and lightning res base. This will enable us to cap our crit avoidance more easily. We still go for ward gain on Shadow Creation. I went for +2 level of Shadow Cascade. This is not mandatory. You could use any other prefix that I previously said, like a Vitality would be really good, mana efficiency with Synchronized Strike, stuff like that. We go for increased armor and increased health. As I said, I just wanted to show that you can go for flat armor, you can go for increased armor, you can also go for flat health. Yeah, there are multiple options that you can do, but make sure that you get increased health. On the belt, as usual, hybrid health and increased health. These are like the two pretty much mandatory for the belt. You could also go for cooldown recovery speed if you get like a nice tier 6 or tier 7 belt with cooldown and sacrifice one or the other between increased health or hybrid health. I go for mana regen for prefixes and the cleanse when you use a potion because cleansing on a potion is like really, really strong. You could arguably get the cleanse on smoke bomb here, but I really, really prefer having it on the belt as like always there to cleanse whenever there's a dangerous situation. Mana regen because like the build is super mana hungry, so you want to get as much mana regen as possible. And of course, the bronze belt for the armor implicit. For the boots, we went for the Solarum Greaves. These have fire res and a lot of armor, so these are a really, really good base for boots. We went for movement speed, vitality, cooldown recovery speed. I put this one as a T7, so prioritize getting cooldown recovery speed on your boots more than on your belt because the belt has increased and hybrid health, whereas the boots can only get hybrid health. So the extra suffix here is the suffix for cooldown recovery speed is best used on the boots rather than on the belt. So this is why I put this here. If you don't have this, you can also get flat health, armor, stuff like that, right? But that would be. I think I will make another video with just like how to gear your characters properly. Um, Engraved Gauntlets here for the endurance as an implicit. We're getting melee damage, leech as health. This can change if you want to use something else. Feel free to do so. You could use attack speed. You could use like dexterity. There are many options, but melee damage, leech as health is always good. I went for area skill because I wanted to make at first I wanted to make it this build like the biggest area shadow cascade possible to have as much clear as possible. Um, so yeah, I want to put this on the gloves, and it enables us to shotgun in a little bit bigger area. We went for armor and hybrid health. Hybrid health mandatory on the gloves, guys. For our relic, we went for the poison res implicit relic and increased leech rate. So we're going to have a lot of leech, and we're going to leech super fast. We went for the mana regen again. We went for crit strike multi, health, and cold res. And if you can get a chance to apply frailty on hit, this is also good here. For our rings, we went with Ivory Rings and Siphon of Anguish. So we go for Siphon of Anguish to get Doom. Doom increases, it's another multiplier for melee damage. So it's very good just to get some more damage on our build. It has also an implicit of Elemental Res, which we actually use to cap our resistances. And also, it's very easy to get LP on this item. So feel free to farm it as you want. So I put mana regen here and endurance. On my Ivory Ring, we're using the ward retention, as you remember, for the ward gain on Shadow Creation. We're using the Necrotic Res to cap our res. Mana regen, Dexterity, Necrotic Res, Poison Res. Basically just a mix and match to be able to cap our resistances here. And finally, we're using Aura's Time Glass because this is probably the most broken item in the game right now. Every 20 seconds, you get a second life. We are also utilizing the ward retention to keep our ward. And it has attack speed, which gives us even more smoothness for the build. Endurance, health. I mean, this is probably the most broken item in the game at the moment. For our idols, I gave you a couple of choices here. It's very you don't really need these specific idols, so we have a lot of choices. I went for increased health and LA res. These are pretty much needed, the elemental res, to cap our resistances when you're using this setup, but you could also use like smaller idols to cap your resistances and use other large idols if you want. But these are best in slot for this build. And then you have the huge idols that I'm using, which have increased damage with Shadow Cascade per active shadow, increased damage for skills used by shadows. These are affixes that you might want if you want to go for damage. If you want to go for tankiness or smoothness of the build, you can go for mana efficiency with Sing Strike. You can go for ward gain on Shadow Creation. So there are multiple affixes that you can use on your idols. And the rest are just generic hybrid health idols and like physical and void res just to cap our resistances, because I'm going for the void res blessing and the physical res blessing. So usually you farm one up, you farm these blessings up to a value of like 70, just about 70, and then you use one idol to cap it. The blessing I'm getting here is mana because there's nothing else really that we really want, and we have like a really mana hungry build so that we can use our combo more times before having to actually stop and regen a little bit of mana. We have critical strike avoidance here, and the last one is armor. Flat armor is super good because we are getting our shurikens giving us 150 increased armor at all times, so we're going to be getting a lot of armor on this build. So that is pretty much it for the gear. For the passives, I go 33 points in the Rogue base class and 79 in the Blade Dancer class. So again, these passives are the one that I put here, but they are kind of flexible. There's like a lot of flexible points in here. You want to get attack speed and physical damage. This is really good. You want to go for glancing blow chance. You want to go for dual wielding. This is mandatory. 1 point in here just to get to the less damage taken while moving, and we're always pretty much dealing our damage while moving, so you'll have less damage taken. And we're getting haste on hit chance this way here. Haste is good for clear. It's also a good defensive ability because it gives you more movement speed, so you can dodge attacks more easily. We're going for 8 points in critical precision to get a lot of critical strike chance. So this is the one way that we're going to be capping our critical strike chance with the build. Something I forgot to mention is that Shadow Cascade actually has a 10%. It has a 10% base critical strike chance compared to pretty much all of the other attacks that have only 5% base. So yeah, you need to know that Shadow Cascade has a 10% base crit chance, and you can cap your crit only with your passives here. In the Blade Dancer tree, I went for Dexterity and Glancing Blow chance. I went for a chance to gain Dust Crowd when hit. So if you get hit by multiple small hits, you will reach the cap of Dust Crowd. And then you go for Dust Crowd chance on melee hit as well. Also giving us 15% melee attack speed, which gives us more smoothness for the build. We go for 5 points just to get the 8% movement speed here. We go for melee physical damage and dodge if hit recently. We go for the increased shadow damage and health gain on shadow creation. The 5 points here is for the leech and the leech rate. So this is one passive that I said why we have flexible passive points, and also you don't really need as much leech, especially with the ward. But it's always nice to have more leech than not have enough. So we go for leech here. 1 point here just to get into weapons of choice, which will give us 160% critical strike chance because we're using a sword and a dagger. I go for 10 points in Argent Veil. The reason for this is that this is going to be like a very, very strong extra defensive layer. If you get below 70% of your life, you gain a stack of Silver Shroud, and that one will give you you have 10 stacks, so you will have 1,000 ward if you ever get below 70 health. And then if you get below 30% health, then you'll have like a bunch of ward as well. It's kind of like a second Aurora Time Glass, but on a 15-second cooldown, and we have Auroras on a 20-second cooldown. So basically, you should pretty much never die if you have Argent Veil and Aurora's Time Glass, unless you majorly mess up. We have Critical Eye that we cap to get critical vulnerability chance. This is very important to cap our crit. And we have also increased critical strike chance here. So our base crit is going to be about 80-ish something, a little bit more than 80, maybe 85 or something like that. And then the rest is going to be used with critical vulnerability. So basically, only using passive points, we're capping our crit chance. We're using Frailty and increased mana regen here, 5 points there, and we have all in for 75% critical strike multiplier. Yeah, that pretty much covers. I still have one unspent point because you can pretty much put it anywhere that you want. You could go for Armor Shred, you could pretty much put it in dodge rating and increase damage while at full health because we're always going to be getting some ward. You could also, if you're running monoliths that have the dodge, enemies have a chance to dodge, you can put points in focus fire so that like the rogue class is really, really good at dealing with bad modifiers from the Monolith of Fate. So we have crit vulnerability, and we have the dodge rating debuff. So these are two very, very good things that the rogue class has. So that pretty much does it for the passives. We went over the idols, the gear, the gameplay. This build was super, super fun to play. It is extremely fast. It has an incredible clear. It's just really, really smooth, and yeah, I highly recommend. This build used to be like very, very popular, but it was overshadowed by Shadow Daggers. I still think like Shadow Cascade has its niche somewhere. It might not be the absolute best, like it might not be as good as Shadow Daggers, but I think I really think it has its spot, and it probably has better clear than Shadow Daggers in some situations. I love using this when farming dungeons, actually. So yeah, that's pretty much it, guys, for the build guide. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments below. And I'm also available on my Discord channel, and I'm also streaming on Twitch. So yeah, feel free to leave a like and I'll see you guys in the next video.